So we're going to do a lot of work to pull those different pieces together. That isn't just about strengthening FE colleges and all the work that's going around there to make sure that that sector is really sustainable so that it can be strong for the future. It's also about looking at how apprenticeships and all the investment going from business into apprenticeships is creating fantastic, high quality apprenticeships for our young people to do. But there's a real need, from my perspective, to start knitting this together so that that pathway for young people that's technical education is strengthened in itself, so the different parts of it actually strengthen one another rather than operating more in isolation. I think we're in a good position to do that, but I think we do need to make sure it all knits together sensibly. And I'm somebody who went to university. I was the first person in my family to go into university. I think the advice that we're giving our young people in schools needs to enable them to know that they have lots of different routes open to them, but they must be lots of different high quality routes, and I'm really determined to make sure that we do a stronger job on that, and that children understand opportunities that are out there in the wider world. When I was at my sixth form college, I never thought about doing law, but I'd never met a lawyer. That was the kind of profession I just didn't come across growing up where I was growing up in Rotherham. And it's very hard to aim for an opportunity when you don't even know it's there. So I think this sense of how we give our young people and children a sense of the breadth of opportunity and an excitement actually for the opportunities that can await them is important. And with the opportunity area work, I really want to see how we can start pulling that together in a more strategic way that's also more tailored to the places that we want to do work in. I also quickly wanted to talk about the teaching profession itself. I'm a chartered accountant, and for me, teaching has always been a profession. It is a profession. I feel very strongly about that actually, and I want to look at not purely the different channels that are now there for people to enter the teaching profession, but I think collectively we need to have a much clearer sense about what good looks like actually in terms of the training that our teachers are getting and the balance and the weight of it between teacher education and practitioner experience in the classroom. And I think we've got these different channels now that have really opened up different routes into the profession, and I think that's great actually. I also though think we need to get a clearer sense of not just what teacher education should be looking like, and I'm really thinking in my mind of school improvement and how we can bake that into teacher education, so we've got a generation of teachers coming through who really understand how to do school improvement, but also then frankly also looking at the breadth of classroom experience that our teachers are getting. And I would simply reflect that when I was training as an accountant, I was in Southampton and I had a range of clients. Some were big, some were small. They were all sorts of different sectors, and my colleagues at Pricewaterhouse in London ended up doing the bank and cash section of Barclays for a whole year. And I am absolutely sure that the breadth of experience that I got going through my training was better than a narrower experience of some of my colleagues who were just simply focused in one place. I'm interested to get a clearer sense of how we can make sure we don't just get high quality teacher education, but also the breadth of experience that our teachers are coming through with is one that will set them fair for a career that can see them be versatile and work in a number of different settings, including schools where we want to see schools improve. I also think that continuous professional development is absolutely vital, and I want to get a clearer sense of how this rolls on from teacher training and how strong CPD can be the norm rather than something that some schools do really well but other schools do less well. I think if we are really going to crack a school-led system where school improvement is baked into what teachers are able to do, then I think the role of CPD beyond teacher training and throughout careers actually becomes critical. And I think if you can then marry that up with a stronger approach on evidence and best practice and how that then feeds into that system, I think then we'll really have the pieces in place to make a significant difference. And I happen to think also that when we look at the challenges around teacher workload, I think it plays into how we tackle some of those issues in the medium and longer term as well. So if we're going to do all of this, I'll absolutely need to work with all of you. Many of you are getting on with this anyway. I think the question is, how do we achieve scale, and how do we take the fantastic work that's already underway, identify it, disseminate it, and do that on a really systematic basis, rather than it being great initiative from teachers, but happening in pockets around the country when it could happen so much more systematically. So there's lots to do. Many of you are already part of MATS. I think they can play a big role in how we achieve this. There's Carmel Education Trust with its 7 schools in and around Darlington and Stockton. That also does a huge amount of work actually with schools outside of the trust. There's the Carmel Teaching School Alliance. I think these are the sorts of models and networks that can really help us have a strong base for doing school improvement. They're not the only trust by any means. There's the Trinity Multi-Academy Trust and Teaching School, Outward Grange, of course, that Academies Trust, the Tudor Learning Trust too. They are achieving fantastic results for schools across the NorthEast. And I want to see more of that happening as a norm going forward. I should also very briefly say that you might have read that I like to get into the detail on policy, and I do. It's my inner accountant. I can't help it. I like to dig into facts, data, evidence. I like to understand things. I often do that by challenging things, by asking pretty open questions, because it's how I make sure that I'm across what I need to understand to be able to take strong decisions. So yes, I do get into the detail. And another thing I should also probably mention is that I've challenged the Department for Education to focus on delivery. I think everyone's happy at producing policy. I think we need to make sure we get stronger on delivery, because that's a massive part of what we do. And I think it matters every bit as much as policy. And I know from my time spent in business, and actually most of my career to date, I'm proud to say, has not been spent in politics and has been spent outside politics and in business. You know, there's no point in having a great plan if you don't know how to execute it. So for me, a focus on delivery is going to be absolutely critical to what I challenge my department to do. So there is a lot going on. You'll have seen from our green paper that we are going to ask those big questions on how we can really have a system where we've got schools that work for everyone, how we can drive up standards, how we can expand the number of good school places. We are looking at what's the right role for selective schools, how they can play a stronger role. I want to see those schools being more accessible for children from disadvantaged backgrounds. I want to see how they can play their role and a stronger role in school improvement and lifting schools around them. We want to challenge other parts of our education system, universities, independent schools, also faith schools actually, about how they can use their expertise to lift attainment. It makes sense certainly in universities because we know it's low attainment. That's the reason why disadvantaged children are less likely to go to university. So there is tons going on, you'll all know that. I'm trying to make sure that we are focused on our core priorities, and there's a lot more that I could have spent time talking through today. I also know that you want a chance to ask me some questions, so I'm going to bring my comments to an end, but just suffice to say, the final point I really wanted to make was that I am absolutely committed and determined to make sure that we create an education system that can mean that wherever a child is starting, that they get the very best start from our education system in life that they can. I'm always keen to listen to people. One of the best things of coming into this job was just the hundreds of emails that I got from teachers with their thoughts, their ideas, their concerns. And I read all of them, I responded to all of them, and they really gave me a good sense of where the profession is at and where our schools are at. And I want to keep that conversation going and that dialogue going, which is one of the reasons why coming here was so important. And I just want to reiterate and finish. I am here because my schools, the teachers in my schools, didn't just teach me the knowledge and skills that I needed to be able to do well. They didn't just teach me resilience. We all need that. You've just been hearing about that. But they taught me to aim high. They gave me a sense of doing well. They gave me a passion, actually, for learning that has stayed with me throughout my life and will do. And I think it's a transformative profession that all of you are in. I believe that children in this part of England, children in the NorthEast, have a key role to play in helping our country be successful. It's never been more important after the 23rd of June. I've always believed our country's greatest asset are its people, but children in this region have a massive role to play in our country's future, and will only really level up Britain when we level them up too. Thank you.